Welcome to the deep dive. We are diving into Small is the New Big by Seth Godin.
Oh, yeah, this one.
Yeah, a listener suggested it. They're trying to wrap their head around all the changes in business, marketing, how we connect with each other these days, what's to cut through the jargon and get to the good stuff.
Makes sense. Godin's good at that, cutting through the noise.
Right. So that's our mission, to pull out the most interesting, most surprising insights from this book and, well, see where they lead us.
Sounds like a plan. And I think one of the most striking ideas right out of the gate is this. Consumers, they hold all of the cards now.
That much.
Think about it. The old way of doing things, treating customers like they don't have a choice, that's just not going to fly anymore.
Yeah. It's like that whole being authentic thing. That's not just a bonus anymore.
It's table stakes. The bare minimum.
Bare minimum. And if you're not authentic, if you're faking it, people can sniff that out a mile away.
Exactly. It's the stories that really connect, that feel real. Those are the ones that spread and last.
Okay, so that's a huge shift. Like, companies can't just hide behind some slick marketing campaign anymore.
Nope. Not a chance.
If they're not walking the walk, people will call them out.
Absolutely. And on top of that, Godin makes this point about how the world is changing faster than ever.
And what's that got to do with it?
Well, he says the most valuable thing you can have, whether you're a person or a whole company, is the ability to change quickly.
Adapt, pivot, all that.
Right. And he doesn't just mean reacting to change. He means being comfortable with it, seeing it as, like, a strength.
Interesting. I guess that makes sense in this environment.
Totally. It's a recurring theme in the book, this need for speed and flexibility. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. Godin also talks about, of all things, blogs.
Blogs. Still a thing.
He thinks so.
Yeah.
He sees them as a way to connect with people who are, hungry for information, for ideas.
Makes sense. More depth than a quick tweet, right?
Yeah. It's not just about fleeting updates. It's about building communities around shared interests.
Got it. So if you want to grow, you need to understand that blog space, how it works.
Absolutely. Be a part of the conversation. Now, Godin really kicks things off with a challenge to the reader. He basically says, how dare you settle for less when the world has made it so easy to be remarkable?
Wow. Okay. Straight to the point.
No messing around.
So we're passing that challenge on to you, dear listener. Let's see if this deep dive sparks something, makes you want to shake things up a bit.
It's a good question, isn't it? What does it even mean to be remarkable these days?
Good point. We'll have to unpack that. But first, Godin talks about this interesting blur between anonymity and privacy.
Yeah, it's almost counterintuitive. Years ago, less anonymity meant you had more privacy.
Right. Everyone in town knew your name, but also minded their own business.
But the internet flips that on its head. You can be more anonymous online, but your privacy feels, well, non-existent.
Yeah. Every click you make, someone's probably tracking it.
Godin even poses this thought experiment. What if there was zero privacy, but everyone was equally exposed?
Whoa. That's a big one.
It makes you think, right? How would we act differently if everything was out in the open?
I don't even know where to start with that one. It's fascinating, though.
For sure. It challenges our assumptions about how the world works.
Okay, so moving on. Godin talks about leverage, particularly online leverage. What's he getting at there?
He's saying that when the internet is actually working as intended, not just bogged down with spam, it's an incredibly powerful tool for spreading ideas.
I see. Like, you don't need a huge budget to get your message out there.
Exactly. You can create something, a blog post, a video, and if it's good, if it resonates, it can reach a ton of people.
And that's the key, right? It's got to be good.
Absolutely. It's about creating quality content that's worth sharing.
Okay. Now, this next bit, I found it kind of challenging. Godin's take on benchmarking. Comparing yourself to others.
I know what you mean. It's almost like a reflex these days to see how you stack up.
Right. But Godin sees a potential downside.
Yeah. He points out that in this hyper-connected world, we can always find someone who seems to be doing better.
Which can make you feel pretty lousy.
It's like that feeling when you're looking for an apartment or a partner. The more specific your criteria get, the harder it is to be satisfied.
Yeah, you end up chasing this ever-shifting ideal.
Exactly. So maybe instead of focusing so much on external comparisons, the focus should be on your own progress, your own definition of success.
I like that. Now let's talk brands. Godin suggests there's a big shift happening away from the big traditional brands.
He's saying those behemoths are struggling to keep up, while smaller, more nimble brands are thriving.
It's not just about size. It's about being able to adapt, to connect in a more personal way.
Exactly. He uses this great example about that bumper sticker. Is it transportation or lifestyle?
That's so true. You're more likely to see that on a Subaru than, say, a Mercedes.
It says a lot about the story the owner wants to tell.
In the Wall Street Journal, they even started tracking which cars celebrities were buying. Like, it became this cultural indicator.
Totally. Brands are intertwined with our identities, our values. What we buy is a statement.
This kind of leads into Godin's thoughts on hard work. He's saying that putting in long hours isn't the same as doing hard work.
He's drawing distinction between the old idea of hard work, which was often measured by hours or physical effort,
Punching the clock, getting your hands dirty.
and the new idea of hard work, which is more about intellectual effort, problem solving, making smart decisions.
So it's less about how much you sweat and more about how much you think.
Exactly. And he even argues that taking calculated risks can be safer in the long run, leads to a more, I guess you could say, recession-proof future.
Interesting. Now let's talk about remarkable. Godin uses that word a lot. What's he really getting at?
It's not about being elitist or weird. It's not about size either.
Okay, so what is it about?
It's about being worth talking about, being noteworthy, something people want to share with others.
Like that burger chain he mentions, Burgerville.
Yeah, it's not fancy, but it's got those unique touches like chocolate hazelnut shakes, seasonal onion rings. It's memorable.
Likes it stand out from the crowd.
Right, you could call it a purple cow in a field of regular cows.
Okay, I see. And this ties into his point about opportunity and change, right?
Big opportunities, they often come with change. And change can be tough. It can feel painful.
And that's why we often miss out, because we shy away from the discomfort.
Right. He even talks about zooming a company's ability to move quickly, to adapt.
Almost like a reflex. How quickly can you adjust course?
Exactly. A high zoom factor is key in this environment.
Okay. Now, Godin isn't afraid to call out bad behavior, like that Los Angeles Times thing.
Ah, yes, that sneaky online registration, trying to trick users into signing up for spam.
It's just so short-sighted, isn't it?
Huh.
You might get a few extra email addresses, but you lose trust.
You alienate people, and in a world where everyone has a voice online, that can backfire big time.
So don't be a jerk. Treat people with respect.
Exactly. It's not just the right thing to do, it's good business.
Now, Godin really gets you thinking with the idea of reimagining existing things, like taking something we know and flipping it on its head.
He challenges us to look at everything, from cars to charities, even political parties, and ask, how could this be completely different?
He throws out this image of cars that have follow me features. I mean, that would change so much.
Right. It's about challenging assumptions, using new technologies to solve old problems in unexpected ways.
It's like the potential for disruption is everywhere if you look for it. Now, what about this cliff business model? That sounded tricky.
It is tricky. Cliff businesses, they need a certain number of people to buy in before they become valuable.
Like, it's only worth it if enough other people are doing it too.
Exactly. Think of something like Bluetooth. It only becomes truly useful when tons of devices use it.
I get it. So getting that initial traction is really hard. It's a huge gamble.
Huge gamble. He contrasts that with online businesses that often start small and grow organically.
Like a blog or something, just finding its audience over time.
Right. No huge marketing blitz needed.
This connects to his idea of multi-patient roles, right? Like the old idea of one job, one title is kind of outdated.
Exactly. People wear multiple hats these days. Instead of sticking to rigid job titles, he suggests embracing that.
Even using more descriptive titles like customer joy specialist.
Change agent, things like that. It reflects the reality of how we work now.
More dynamic. Now, what about this clownhood concept? That sounded kind of funny.
Well, he uses clownhood to describe the tendency to ignore reality in business, to stick to wishful thinking over facts.
Oh, I've seen that.
Right, clinging to those pet projects that everyone knows aren't working.
He even suggests people wear little red noses when someone's being a clown.
Yeah, that's his humorous way of highlighting the need for data-driven decisions for facing facts.
The anti-clown, that's the person who looks at the evidence, the long-term view.
Smart. Now here's a curveball. Godin actually argues that competence can be an enemy of change.
What? How does that work?
Think about it. If you're really good at something, change can feel threatening. It can make you feel less competent.
So you cling to the old ways even if they're not the best anymore.
It can happen. He uses this example, contrasting Charlie Trotter, a chef known for being innovative even if things didn't always work perfectly.
With like a classic diner that makes the same dishes the same way every time.
Exactly. Both have their place, but sometimes that over-reliance on competence can stifle creativity.
So don't be afraid to experiment, to try new things, even if you might mess up.
Absolutely. And that ties into his point about the fear of criticism.
Which, let's be honest, is a huge problem for a lot of people.
It can paralyze you, stop you from taking action,
Right.
lead to endless research, overthinking.
Godin has these satirical rules for criticizing, which are pretty funny, but also point out how pointless it can be.
Yeah, it's more about tearing people down than actually helping them improve.
What kind of feedback culture do we want to create?
One that encourages growth, not fear. Now, what about finding those holes in the market?
That sounds like a recipe for success.
It is. It's about spotting those unmet needs, the things people want but can't find.
And then swooping in with the solution.
Exactly. He uses audible.com as an example. They needed MP3 players to really take off.
So it's about seeing those connections, the things that have to exist for your idea to work.
Precisely. Now, Godin has this modest proposal for customer service that's pretty tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah, he's not actually suggesting we offer terrible service, is he?
No, it's satire.
Mhm.
But he's pointing out that so many companies are offshoring support, cutting corners, that maybe they should just go all the way.
The point being, I guess, that neglecting customer service is a really bad idea.
It is. Happy customers are your biggest asset.
They're the ones who tell their friends. Now, he uses this example of daylight saving time. Seems random, but it's actually a great illustration.
Right. People resisted it even though it made sense.
It shows how deeply ingrained our opposition to change can be.
Even when that change is logical, even beneficial.
Okay, now who are the digerati? Is that like the cool kids table online?
It's more like the folks who are really comfortable with technology, the early adopters, the influencers in the digital world.
So if you want to stay relevant, you got to understand what they're doing, how they're thinking.
Absolutely. You can't ignore the trends they're setting. And speaking of trends, Godin points out this simple but powerful act, apologizing.
Saying you're sorry, that's it.
It's more than that. It's about acknowledging when you mess up.
When things don't go as planned.
Most customers, they get it. They're understanding if you're honest with them.
But he says a lot of companies are weirdly resistant to apologizing,
It's like they think they'll lose face or something.
but it ends up costing them more in the long run.
Lost sales, bad reviews, a little humility goes a long way.
Now, what about this trap of busyness? We all fall into that, right?
Godin cautions against it. He says too many organizations prioritize keeping everyone busy instead of focusing on actual impact.
So it's not about checking things off a list. It's about making sure those things matter.
Exactly. Don't mistake activity for achievement. Think about your own work, your own business.
Where are we just spinning our wheels?
Good question. Now, Godin has some strong opinions about business school.
Yeah, he's not a fan of the traditional MBA model, is he?
He thinks it's too focused on theory, not enough on practical skills.
Not enough on real-world experience.
Right. He proposes this no BS New Order business school that focuses on building networks, getting your hands dirty.
So more learning by doing, less sitting in a lecture hall.
He even says you can learn a lot of this stuff on your own through self-study.
Now, what about otaku? That sounds kind of niche.
It is, but it's important. Otaku are those people who are super passionate about something. Experts, enthusiasts.
The diehards, the superfan.
They can be incredibly influential, but you have to understand them, speak their language.
You can't fake it. You got to be authentic.
Exactly. Generic marketing just won't cut it.
Okay, I'm curious about this feedback funnel idea.
It's like flipping the traditional marketing funnel. Instead of broadcasting to everyone, you focus on your most loyal customers.
You're empowering them to become your advocates.
Exactly. Your fan club. And online tools make this easier than ever.
Like blogs, social media, all that.
He even uses Squidoo as an example. It was this platform where people could create lenses about their passions.
So user-generated content, curated by experts.
It created a whole network of information and recommendations.
Pretty powerful. It's like marketing built in, right?
Absolutely. Now, Godin, he's a big believer in having BH eggs, big, hairy, audacious goals.
Those sound intimidating.
They're supposed to be. The idea is to have a long-term vision that's so ambitious it keeps you motivated.
So you don't get bogged down in the day-to-day stuff.
Exactly. It gives you a North Star to navigate by.
What about new technology? Godin touches on things like faster Wi-Fi, more multimedia content online.
Yeah.
How's all that changing things?
Well, it's creating new opportunities, new challenges. Businesses have to adapt, leverage those new capabilities.
Right, you can't just ignore the trends.
Exactly. He even uses this example, lawns. He says the whole concept of having a lawn has marketing built in.
So how does that work?
It's not like there were big ad campaigns for lawns. It's spread through social pressure, the desire to fit in with your neighbors.
Keep up with the Joneses.
Exactly. It's an idea that's contagious.
Okay, I've got to ask you about this guillotine and rack analogy. That's pretty intense.
He's talking about companies facing disruption. He says they have a choice: the quick, painful death of the guillotine or the slow, agonizing death of the rack.
Ouch.
The guillotine is making those big, necessary changes.
And the rack is clinging to the status quo, even though it's not working anymore.
Right. It's that human tendency to avoid short-term pain, even if it leads to a worse outcome down the road.
He even quotes Heinlein, right?
Yeah.
About how no one is entitled to guaranteed profits.
It's a reminder that the world changes, and you have to adapt or die.
Okay, how about quality is free? That sounds too good to be true.
It's a famous saying by Philip Crosby. The idea is that it's cheaper to do things right the first time than to fix them later.
I guess it makes sense. You avoid all the costs of rework, customer complaints, all that.
Exactly. And Godin builds on that by saying that in today's market, very good is not good enough.
You got to be great, or you're just invisible.
He uses Hershey Park as an example. It's okay, but it's not remarkable.
Not something you'd rave about.
Right. You need to create experiences that people will remember, that they'll talk about.
So stand out. Be different. Now, what about this flipping the flip muscle thing? That's a mouthful.
It's about cultivating a mindset of being open to change, not just in individuals, but in whole organizations.
So not being afraid of new ideas.
He gives an example from the W Hotel, a small gesture of genuine care that made a big impact. It's about those little things that show you're paying attention.
Okay, and Godin also suggests focusing your efforts on people who are ready for change.
It's more effective to target people who are already looking for something new.
Newcomers to a field, people trying to solve a specific problem.
Exactly. Don't waste time trying to convince those who are set in their ways.
Now, what about the lie of local max? That one caught my attention.
The local max is that initial peak of success. The danger is that people get comfortable there, and they miss out on the big max.
They settle for good enough instead of pushing for great.
It's about not being afraid to go through the dip, the challenges that come with reaching a higher level.
So keep pushing, keep aiming higher. What about brand journalism? Is that a real thing?
It's the idea that brands should become their own publishers, their own storytellers.
Instead of just putting out ads.
Exactly. And the brand cocktail party analogy, that's about creating spaces for dialogue, for genuine interaction with your audience.
So it's less about broadcasting and more about fostering relationships.
Exactly. Now, Godin makes this point that a lot of what we believe about business is just plain wrong.
Based on false assumptions, outdated ideas.
He challenges us to question those beliefs, to be open to new ways of doing things.
And he talks about the maybe problem.
Indecision.
Yeah.
It's a killer. Organizations need to be able to make decisions, even if they're not perfect.
Better to make a wrong decision sometimes than to be stuck in limbo.
He even talks about superstitions in business, practices that people follow just because that's how it's always been done.
It's about challenging those assumptions, seeing if those practices still make sense.
Exactly. Now, here's an interesting one. The placebo effect in marketing.
Isn't that like a medical thing?
It is, but Godin applies it to marketing. The idea is that your story, your presentation, can influence how people perceive your product.
So it's about creating that positive expectation, building that excitement.
Exactly. And he also stresses making the tough decisions first.
Getting the hard stuff out of the way.
It's more about being proactive, tackling those big challenges head on instead of constantly reacting to smaller problems.
Makes sense. Prioritize what matters most. What about those products that are just too complex? He uses smartwatches as an example.
Right. Those watches with a million features that no one uses. Simplicity is key.
Don't overwhelm people. Make it easy to use, and they'll actually use it.
Exactly. He even critiques traditional revenue models, like NPR pledge drives.
Those are always a bit painful.
Well, he's saying those models that rely on interruption or inconvenience, they might not work so well anymore.
People have more choices now. Less patience for things that get in the way.
Exactly. He compares podcasting to blogging, makes the point that podcasting, while great for building connection, has a higher barrier to entry.
Yeah, it's a bigger time commit.
So it can be harder to build a huge audience. Now, he tells this really interesting story about Lionel Poulain, this amazing baker.
What's the takeaway there?
Poulain was known for his unwavering focus on quality, on doing things the right way.
Even if it was harder, less efficient.
He built a legacy on that commitment to excellence. It's a reminder that authenticity and quality matter. Now, Godin also talks about this paradox of progress.
Things are better than they used to be, but they could still be a lot better.
He calls out that complacency, that sense that we've already arrived.
We can always strive to do more, to improve.
And that leads to his idea of the RPB, the reasonable person benefit.
Making those small, low-cost changes that make a big difference for the user.
He uses JetBlue as an example, just redesigning their airplane bathrooms to be more user-friendly.
It's about those little touches that show you care.
And ultimately, your marketing, your offers, they have to provide real, honest value.
No more empty promises, no more gimmicks.
Right. It's about being genuine and also not crossing the line from remarkable to obnoxious.
Don't be that guy, right?
Exactly. And he shares this observation, the Provincetown helmet habit.
Okay, what's that about?
He noticed how in Provincetown, everyone wears helmets when they bike, even though it's not required.
Peer pressure.
It highlights how our behavior is influenced by the people around us.
Even our preferences.
Right.
Interesting. Now, he talks about the importance of selling the why, not just the what.
Especially now, with so much competition, you need to tell a compelling story about why your product matters, why it's different.
Not just what it does, but what it stands for.
Exactly. And he points out how search engines can actually benefit you and your competitors.
What? How does that work?
When people search for something, they see a range of choices. Being listed next to your competitors gives you legitimacy.
It's like being in the right neighborhood, even if you're not the biggest store on the block.
Right. And your marketing, it should be anticipated, personal, relevant.
No more spam, no more irrelevant ads.
People want to feel like you understand them, that you're speaking directly to their needs.
And Godin lays out some key principles for good marketing.
Like marketing starts before you even have a product.
You have to understand your audience, what they want, what problems they need solved.
It's about conversations, not just advertising. And of course, creating remarkable products that people will talk about.
And he talks about respecting your best customers.
They're the ones who will spread the word.
They're worth more than any ad campaign. Now he talks about the new economy, how work life is blurring.
We're always connected, always on. The lines are getting fuzzy.
Which can be both good and bad.
Right. More flexibility, but also more potential for burnout.
And he circles back to the danger of busyness, how it can get in the way of making those important decisions.
It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and lose sight of the bigger picture.
So step back, take a breath, make sure you're working on the things that matter.
Exactly. And he reiterates this point about respect. Treating your customers right, it's not just ethical, it's profitable.
People can see right through you if you're not sincere.
Absolutely. Now, what about those riffs he talks about?
Those sound like opportunities.
They are. Riffs are those fundamental shifts in the market, in consumer behavior. Like, the rules of the game change.
He gives the example of Steve Jobs and the graphical user interface, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or animated movies. Even his own mom with her museum store marketing.
They all saw an opportunity that others missed.
And he says established companies often struggle with this.
They're too focused on pleasing everyone, too afraid of change. So he lays out this 3-step guide to rifting.
Okay, I'm all ears.
First, spot that change in the rules.
Yeah.
Second, ask why, over and over again, to understand the resistance.
Get to the root of the problem.
And third, take advantage of the opportunity. Be bold.
I like it. Now, he also talks about microblogs and RSS feeds. Seem a bit old school these days.
They are, but they can still be powerful for connecting directly with an audience that wants your content.
Cutting through the noise, getting right to the people who care.
Exactly. And he makes this point that what feels safe sticking with the status quo can be the riskiest thing you do.
So sometimes you got to shake things up.
Embrace change. It might be scary, but it's the only way to grow.
He also critiques bad sales presentations.
Even if you have a great product, a bad presentation can kill it.
It's all about how you tell your story, how you connect with people.
And speaking of stories, he comes back to this idea of marketing as storytelling.
It's about authenticity, about making promises and keeping them.
Being real, being consistent.
Building trust. Now, what about this scarcity of courage? That sounds deep.
He's saying that we have so much information at our fingertips, but what's really lacking is the courage to act on it.
To take those risks, to make those big decisions.
Exactly. And when it comes to the internet, he lists these secrets to success. Relentless execution, making and keeping promises, and being open.
Open out.
Like open Wi-Fi networks, open to feedback, open to new ideas.
Makes sense. You got to be accessible, approachable,
And he uses job hunting as an example.
trying to fit in, doing what everyone else does. That's a recipe for mediocrity.
You got to stand out, be remarkable.
And he comes back to this theme of smallness, right?
The power of small. He talks about economies of tiny, how small, nimble entities have an advantage.
They can move faster, adapt more easily.
And he contrasts that with the failures of huge companies like Enron, the struggles of big media.
So think small, act fast.
That's the new mantra. He also talks about digital fidelity.
Like how music sounds better on vinyl.
Well, he's making the point that digital, while convenient, can lack the richness of analog experiences.
So find ways to create those sensory experiences, even in a digital world.
Exactly. And he uses this analogy, the prisoner joke.
Okay, what's that about?
It's about how, in a world full of information, just having a message isn't enough. It's how you tell it, how you make it stick.
So storytelling matters.
More than ever.
He reiterates that people still crave those sensory-rich experiences.
We want to touch, smell, taste, not just see things on a screen.
And he even rethinks copyright.
He says it should be about encouraging creation, not protecting the status quo.
Interesting. So fostering innovation instead of stifling it.
Exactly. He also highlights the importance of feedback, even negative feedback.
It's how we learn, right?
And he talks about how TV, while still everywhere,